Hello and welcome. How much has the battered Palestinian Gaza Strip recovered a year after Israel launched a crushing military offensive against it? What hope is there for a place that essentially remains locked down by its neighbors? Well, the world watched as Al Jazeera led the reporting on what was called Operation Cast Lead by the Israeli military and the Gaza massacre by much of the Arab press. For 22 days, Israeli forces launched a bombing campaign and ground invasion that killed 1,400 Palestinians, including 300 children. 13 Israelis died during the war. The UN found that both Israel and Hamas had committed war crimes in the course of the fighting. Israel was accused of deliberately targeting civilians, industrial sites and water installations and using disproportionate force to destroy civilian property and infrastructure. Hamas was criticized for using civilians as human shields and for firing rockets into Israel to spread fear among the Israeli population. Well, a year on, Palestinians have essentially been unable to rebuild their homes, schools, hospital roads, or any infrastructure for that matter, largely due to the ongoing Israeli siege on the Gaza Strip. For the next 2 days, we'll be exploring the fallout of that conflict a year ago and what it's meant to both Palestinians and Israelis. Today, we focus on the 1.5 million Palestinians who live in the Strip, as we ask, how hard will it be for Gaza to heal from the wounds of war? Remember, you can join our conversation with your questions and comments. You can send an SMS or email, and we also welcome your phone calls onto the show as well. Well, I'm joined today by two Palestinians who know a lot about the process of healing. Dr. Azzeldine Abu Al-Aish is a physician from Gaza who trained and practiced in Israel and has been promoting peace between the two peoples all his life. On January the 16th, the Israeli army bombed his home, killing 3 of his daughters and his niece. They were aged between 14 and 22. He joins us from Toronto in Canada, where he's a professor of global health at the University of Toronto. And from Gaza City, we have Dr. Ayad Sarraj, a psychiatrist who founded the Gaza Community Mental Health Program. He's a renowned human rights activist and also heads the Palestinian mediation efforts to reconcile the two major parties, Fatah and Hamas. I welcome you both to the show. And Dr. Ayad, if I could start with you there in Gaza, please, sir. Let me ask you, from a perspective of someone who is still there in the Gaza Strip, what sort of conditions exist right now, a year on?
Well, on the issues of the economy, the situation is deteriorating. We have the tunnel business now flourishing, which is smuggling goods from Egypt with high prices and bad quality. But there is no real economy in Gaza. So much unemployed people. It ranged between 40 to 50% of the people are unemployed. 80% of the people live on charity food from UNRWA and other agencies. People are desperate. People have a real serious problem of hopelessness and helplessness, and they see no end of the tunnel. We feel suffocated with the siege, and we are frightened that Israel is going to do it again.
Dr. Ayad, let me ask you, what is the priority then of the people of Gaza right now? What is it they want the most to see changed?
Well, I think that the ultimate aim of any Palestinian, particularly people in Gaza, are to see Palestine free, united, and people are dignified. But in the way to that, I think people need unity. They know that our unity between the West Bank and Gaza and some kind of reconciliation between Fatah and Hamas is necessary as a first step. They want the siege to be lifted so their homes are rebuilt after so much destruction that Israel has left behind. And they want their economy to flourish. They want jobs. They want to be educated. They want students want to go out to join their universities. Families need to be reunited with each other after so much suffocation and the blockage of movement of people in and out of Gaza.
Dr. Azzeldine, thank you for joining us from Toronto in Canada. And I ask you, sir, you had a particular tragedy with direct loss in your family, and I'm sorry for that. But I ask you, what has stayed most with you a year on? What images or what particular memories are strongest with you right now?
The memories I am as a Palestinian from the Gaza Strip, still 1 year passed, and still the wound of the Gazans is profusely bleeding and it's open. It's shame for the international community after 1 year, which proves the failure of the international community to lift the siege and to get rid of the suffering of the Gazans. That's the most painful for me as a Palestinian. I remember my daughters, my people there, but about 1.5 million Palestinians who are killed on daily basis. It's immoral, unethical to witness and observe that. It's immoral to kill and stab someone who is dead. Gazans are killed and dead every day, hundreds of times.
Dr. Azzeldine, let me
I succeeded to manage myself.
I'm going to ask you a little more about that in a moment, sir, but let me ask you to address a viewer question we got from the United Kingdom, because our viewers have a chance to ask questions on this show as well. And Abdul Ismail from the UK wrote in saying this. He says, the principal reason for the assault on Gaza last year is to add to the misery of the Palestinian people so they will give up and leave. This is just another policy of indirect ethnic cleansing which started pre-1948, and the world sits by, watches and does nothing. You were one of those who was driven to leave, I guess, and I wonder how hard it was to make that decision. What was it that made you say, I can't stay in Gaza anymore?
I didn't leave Gaza. I came to Toronto. Even this offer was offered to me before the tragedy. I am coming here to Toronto with the work permit, and my mind, my heart is with my people there. I will help my people from here. I will never, and no one can take any Palestinian from him.
Now, you said, sir, that you are able to cope. You have the facility to be able to cope with your loss and to deal with what you went through. You say, but many others in Gaza are unable to do that.
That's the issue. This is the responsibility. This is your responsibility, Rez, and the international responsibility. This is the world. They must take action. It is not just to speak and to talk. They must act. I hope 2010 to be the year of action and to lift the siege and to get rid of the suffering of the Gazans in particular and the Palestinians in general.
Now, Dr. Saraj, Dr. Ayad, if I could get you back into the conversation here and ask about the feelings Gazans have right now about staying there, whether there is a sense that perhaps they feel forced to leave, and also the sense that the world has stood by and really done very little to help the people of Gaza. To what degree do you feel that's the case?
Well, I think that the people generally feel so frustrated with the international community, for sure. They feel more frustrated with the Palestinian politics of fighting among ourselves. They feel that this Palestinian story of fighting, internal fighting, is causing so much harm, and at the end of the day, it benefits the Israelis and give Israel the excuse to launch its war on Gaza and to continue to have the siege on Gaza, and they want this chapter to be finished as soon as possible. And I think that it is time now to tell both Mr. Abbas, the head of the Palestinian Authority and the chairman of Fatah, and Mr. Mash'al of Hamas, enough is enough. Dividing the country is causing only benefit to our enemies. Enough is enough. You must be united. We must unite our country. Let us have a Palestinian state that is sovereign, independent, and rebuild our lives, rebuild our homes now, not tomorrow.
Interesting what you say there, Dr. Ayad. We had this comment from a viewer in Pakistan, if I could read this email, from Muntasar Malik in Pakistan, who says, until Hamas and Fatah are united, I think this will keep happening because divided you fall. They can compete with Israeli aggression only by standing together. Israel's politicians have differences, but against the people of Palestine, they are united. The Palestinians will have to learn from them. I wonder, considering what you've just said, which echoes that same idea that Palestinians must unite, Dr. Ayad, where is the reconciliation effort taking place? Who is leading the effort to get the Palestinians united again?
Well, I think that there are two camps, internal and external, working together. One camp is working for the unity of the Palestinians, and one camp is working against the unity of the Palestinians. And I must tell you, and it is sad fact, that some of the outside players are more influential today than Palestinians themselves in the decision of unity and disunity. There are some groups within the Palestinian camps also that benefit from the division, and they want this to be perpetuated somehow. And Israel in the middle are enjoying and taking the whole fruit out of the division of the Palestinians by controlling the West Bank, making more settlements, make Jerusalem more Jewish, and also suffocate Gaza and throw the whole Gazan problem into the face of Egypt and make the Palestinians fight with the Egyptians instead of fighting with the Israelis. This is what is happening today, and it is so sad that the Palestinian leaders know all this and do nothing.
We have on the line from Toronto, Mahmoud. Mahmoud, what would you like to ask? Go ahead, Mahmoud.
I was saying that when the Gaza is controlled by the government, which do not respect the unity of the Palestinian people, and they are fighting with Mahmoud, and they are getting money from Iranian, and they have established their own rule. How can, if they are not respecting the international law, and my colleagues, I'm professor at University of Toronto too, he's expecting the international community goes and helps them.
Okay, so Dr. Izzeldin, what Mahmoud there on the line from Toronto is asking is, how can the people of the people in both Palestinian territories there expect any kind of help if they can't help themselves to unite and perhaps take a straight path?
I fully understand the question, and I think for Palestinians, they must take responsibility. It's our responsibility, and to work for that responsibility, we must give up the parties and the movement's interest and the individual interest for the national interest. We must give up that individualism and our ego to get rid. The Palestinian people deserves more than that.
Gentlemen, I'm going to ask you to stand by. We have to take a very short break, but we'll continue our discussion in just a moment. Don't go away. Welcome back to our discussion on life in the Gaza Strip 1 year after the Israeli attacks which reduced much of its infrastructure to rubble. I'm joined by Dr. Ayad Sarraj, a prominent human rights activist and psychiatrist based in Gaza, who's also involved in the reconciliation efforts between Fatah and Hamas. And Dr. Izzeldin Abu Al-Aish, who's a gynecologist who practiced medicine both in Israel and the Gaza Strip until the Israeli army shelled his home, killing 3 of his daughters and a niece. He's joining us from Toronto in Canada, where he's working currently. As we get back to our discussion, we've got on the line from Saudi Arabia, Majid. Majid, go ahead, please.
Yes, Mr. Khan. Thank you for your program.
Pleasure. Go ahead,
Yes,
sir.
I have a question. You know, every time I turn a news channel, we always have these talks about, you know, what Israel has been done, what they've done to Gaza, to Palestine, to Jerusalem. And honestly, you know, these people, they have strategy, they have objective, and they have a plan, and they are doing it. And they are not speaking so much as we do in Arabic channels or, you know, debates and dialogues. When we are going to see a strategy to build, you know, Palestine,
Okay.
instead of, you know, in having all this dialogue and debates for 60 years.
Right. Majid, thank you. I'm going to ask Dr. Ayad Sarraj on this point. It relates to something you said earlier, sir, that, you know, that there's been a lot of discussion, and Majid is saying there's a lot of talk, but it seems to be no visible strategy for moving forward in trying to create some sort of Palestinian homeland.
Well, there's so much energy in the Palestinian communities everywhere in Gaza, in the West Bank, and anywhere they live for building. There's so much spirit for the future. And I know for a fact that, for instance, Dr. Salam Fayyad, the Prime Minister in Ramallah, is doing so much in order to put the infrastructure of building the institution for the Palestinian state. And he said that within 2 years we can be ready for the unilateral declaration of a Palestinian state. However, he needs to be helped by all the Palestinians. We are individuals are so good, but sometimes it is difficult for us to work in a group, and this is what we need, is discipline. The discipline of democratization, transparency, and accepting the other, rather than being only concentrate on the differences. We can, you know, we can really help each other to be one, and encourage each other to show all our talents together. Mm-hmm. We can complement each other instead of fighting each other. This is what we need, a new spirit of leadership that can accommodate all our energy and all our spirit in building Palestine and pursuing the march for freedom and for statehood.
And Dr. Izzeldin Abu Al-Aish, let me ask you to take a question that's coming from our live station.
What you mentioned, the strategy. Concerning the strategy, what you mentioned, I think, to have a strategy and the planning, we need security stability. And to have security stability, to guarantee the sustainability of your planning and the implementation of your strategies and the plans. That's what do we need as Palestinians, security, stability, and the freedom.
Now, Dr. Azzeldine, you have the rare perspective of having worked in both the Palestinian areas and in Israel itself as a doctor. And I wonder if you could take a question that we got from our live station chat room, where people around the world are discussing this. And a viewer in the United States, going by the name of Gio on the live station chat room, says, "Where was the global rage when suicide bombers were killing everyone in Israel?" Give me a perspective from your friends in Israel and people you know in Israel on how they view the way things were going, not only in Gaza, but in the years before, where there were suicide bombers.
I am a physician, and when I am dealing with a case to reach a diagnosis, I take history, symptoms, signs, and reach a final diagnosis. These suicidal bombs are symptoms of the main disease. We must look for the roots of the disease. But concerning what happened, as a physician with my colleagues in Israel, they are human beings as I am, and they have full passion and support. And even within the borders of the hospitals where we deal with patients with the privacy, with equality, can we deal with it outside? Can our leaders in both sides learn from doctors and treat our people in both sides with the same privacy, equality, and justice?
Now, Dr. Ayad, let me ask you what you made of the report that was commissioned by the United Nations and led by Richard Goldstone on how the Gaza conflict was conducted. Do you expect anyone ever to be accountable on either side?
Well, I think it is very clear that Mr. Goldstone, Judge Goldstone was so clear about it in a very comprehensive and systematic manner, and very highly professional and widely respected report. For the first time since the tragedy of the Palestinians, somebody is calling for a trial of the Israelis who committed war crimes in Gaza. And if Israel is not going to do it itself, then the Security Council is recommended to refer the case to the International Criminal Court. This is a very important step in exposing, first of all, that Israel has never, and particularly in this war, respected the human rights and the lives of humanity and the humanitarian conditions in Gaza, and committing by the war crimes and crimes against humanity. I know that Hamas can defend itself by saying that we are part of the resistance, and that there is nothing to fight except to send these rockets, and there are no army to combat. When there is an army to combat, we can go to battle with them. But since we are put in this cage called Gaza, the only thing we have is to send these rockets, which is homemade and so on. But we need a proper and transparent investigation of the matter now, and I hope that at the end of the day we'll find a accountable party, and I think most probably it will be some Israeli generals and politicians who committed first the decision to go into war, and then the decision to bomb civilians and kill so many Palestinians during this war, including children, and wounding thousands of them, and demolishing homes and so on. Israel needs to be punished. Israel has managed all these years to get away with impunity. It is time now to take account and to take the responsibility and to be punished for its crimes in Gaza and Palestine generally.
Okay, Kiruben is on the line from Egypt. Kiruben, what would you like to ask?
Okay, my question is the focus of the two speakers has been a call for reconciliation between Fatah and Hamas. But my understanding of the situation is, why don't they try to convince Hamas to just abandon, to try to whatever, or resist the Israeli occupation by force, because this will never work.
Okay, let me ask that to Dr. Azzeldine then. I mean, ultimately what Kiruben is saying is that the use of Hamas's rockets, that Hamas's military action is an excuse for Israel to actually take action against the Palestinians. Perhaps someone should tell Hamas to abandon that approach.
What I can say, that military ways and violence proved its failure and is futile, not just within the last year, decades ago. And I fully believe that words are stronger than bullets. We must change our course, because our case is a just case, and we must use the right weapon to get our rights.
Now, Dr. Ayad, let me ask you as a psychiatrist, how you've been affected, how your own psychology has been affected a year on, looking at considering what you went through.
Well, I remember these days last year, I was terrified, homebound, and with my family, most of the time shaken, listening to screams of women and children, listening to the sound of bombs, watching the skies with the flares of the phosphorus bomb, which we didn't know at the time it was phosphorus bombs, watching TV every now and then, although the reception was always bad because of the Israeli jamming the satellite, but watching the dead bodies and the wounded and feeling the agony of people, of my people. Now, in the last year, I managed myself to help myself and to help my family, and also through the Gaza Community Mental Health Program, and the workers there, and their hundreds, have tried to help thousands of Palestinians in the schools and in the community. You know that in the last year we estimated, according to our research, now 15% of the people, particularly children, are suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder,
right,
which need long-term treatment. 15% of the children, and this needs massive work,
right,
and we started already, but it will take years, and we expect even more to come in the years.
Well, listen, Dr. Ayad Siraj and Dr. Azaldin Abu Alaysh, thank you very much for joining us. We're out of time, but thank you for taking part in this debate.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, and thank you for being with us with your questions. Remember, you can follow the show on Facebook and see what we're up to there. You can give us your feedback on topics and post your questions and comments. On the next show, we continue our discussion of the fallout of the war on Gaza, focusing on international reaction. Activists around the world have stepped up their calls for sanctions against Israel, ranging from divestment from any financial interest in Israel to prosecution of top officials, inspired by the attempts to pressure South Africa to end its policies of apartheid in the 1980s. We'll speak to a leading professor in one of Israel's top universities who agrees with the idea of a boycott to, quote, save Israel from itself. Make sure you tune in for that. From me and the team, we'll see you next time.